specifically mountain COPD. And then we have 7 million more places rules on that. And so when it goes on to FEMA for their approval, it's kind of goes, they can get it. Feel better on this one. I do a lot of the other, but I used to submit some. Good. That's good.
All right, it's 1:30. Call a meeting to order. Councilmember Paula and myself, along with city admin, all are present. First thing up is the approval of the minutes. I'll move the approval. Second.
Have a second here.
Thank you. Anyone against? None. Great. Public comments. Public is welcome to address the committee at this time on any matter not on the agenda.
Mayor, we have one member of the public in attendance and they are not raising their hand at this time.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. And moving on to discussion items. First one up is, did you want to? So I was just going to close it, share to the table. First one up is update on local homelessness activities through Alexandria Valley Healthcare, Wallace House, and Reach from Home. So Alexandria Valley Healthcare, who wants to speak? Anyone? There's 2 attendees. All right. Okay, so since let's see one representing them, let's do Wallace House. Colleen or Jessica?
Yeah, hi, Colleen here, Colleen Halbom. So the latest on Cherry Creek Village, we're getting real close to putting people in the apartments. We've got all the furniture placed and we're down to, the bedding and that sort of thing. So we're really close. We should get our certificate of occupancy at the end of this month, or the 19th rather, and get people in by the end of the month, hopefully. So we're tracking along really well there. It turned out that we, plus we're full. That's another important thing to mention. And 90% of the folks there did not have to be homeless. So that's another important distinction that we wanted to make. We started out trying to go chronically homeless, but that didn't work out. We weren't able to find any chronically homeless families that were either willing to move to Cloverdale or that were from Cloverdale. And then let's see what else. So we have 2 literally homeless individuals and the rest are single moms. We have 27 children. And so that's the profile of who we've placed. And let's see, the other news, unless somebody had questions on Cherry Creek, I don't know before I move on.
No, that's amazing to hear. 27 children. That blows me away.
Yeah, it's great. Everybody's really excited to get up here and yeah, so the other big news, pretty significant turn of events for our agency is we have decided that we are giving up the operations of the Wallace House. We've decided we're going to give Wallace House back to the Episcopal Diocese so that we can focus 100% on Cherry Creek Village.
Great. Thank you. Anything else?
No, I think that's about it. Unless, Jessica, do you have anything you wanted to add in, or are we good?
No, Colleen, I think you covered it all. Thank you.
Questions?
I just got one clarifying question. Colleen, when will that take place, the Wallace House close?
So as soon as everybody moves out of the Wallace House, which will be, in the next couple of weeks or so, then we'll hand the keys back to the church.
Got it.
So
Thanks.
that's, we're talking about around September 1st.
Colleen, do you have any idea what they're going to do? What the church's ideas are?
Well, I probably want to leave that up to them to disclose. I'm not all that comfortable with discussing it. I know there are some things in play, but I don't know that anything's been settled.
Okay, thank you. Should we move Jody over to panelist?
Mike, if you can hear me, can you move Jody Kane over from an attendee to a panelist? There you go.
All right, well, thank you, Colleen. Alexander Valley Healthcare, who wants to speak on your behalf? Jody, I'll throw it at you. How about that?
Yeah, I think Jody is gonna take this. I don't know. She just joined, so.
Thank you. Jody, this is Todd. Do you have any updates from?
Hi there.
There we go.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I had some issues getting in. Okay. Yeah, so Debbie couldn't be here today, so she has asked me to go ahead and give the announcements. And I am sorry to announce that AVH is going to be resigning from the Cloverdale Homeless Advocacy Committee. We will continue to accept new patients who are experiencing homelessness, and will provide them with comprehensive primary care, medical, dental, substance abuse, behavioral health, case management, and all and any other financial services that they may need. We will continue to support the city's efforts to address the homelessness in Cloverdale, but we have to seek more support and collaboration from homeless providers that are going to be able to provide the level of service that our patients need and deserve. So we will continue to work with the county on housing solutions, and we'll continue providing, participating in the county's coordinated entry meetings and programs, which I am attending. And AVH remains just committed to Cloverdale, and we're here as a healthcare resource and for any of those seeking care. So that is my announcement for today.
Thank you, Jody.
Yes.
Any questions or comments? Anyone?
Mayor, I have a comment, maybe maybe a question. Well, first, I just want to acknowledge the work that the committee has done to help with preparation of a strategic master plan. We're bringing that to council on Wednesday for formal adoption, and the team at AVH has been particularly helpful in moving the planning process forward. So first, I want to thank Jody and Blake for their involvement and dedication of time to this effort. It's been quite a bit of our time spent on this in the subcommittee talking about homelessness issues. So first, I just want to say on behalf of the city that I really appreciate your involvement. And recognize that you're resigning. Obviously, the city is not a homelessness provider per se. We work with our partners and collaborate with other entities to provide those services. So, we still see you as a valuable partner. So, if there's an opportunity for you to continue to, participate in these meetings, we certainly encourage and welcome it. They're obviously open, but you do offer a lot of valuable information. And so, just any consideration to I recognize you've got a busy schedule and a lot of work to do, but we really do appreciate your technical expertise that you brought to this committee. So, if you want to chat about that, what that looks like, if you can convey that to Debbie, that would be greatly appreciated, because obviously we do value your input at this subcommittee. And so, we'll miss you tremendously if you're not a participant. But again, thank you for the time that you've spent with us in this effort. I really appreciate it.
And I want to piggyback on that a little bit, because I want to recognize that we're probably the only town in the county that got to a functional zero with their homeless. And that was because of the work that everyone did, albeit not perfect, and we don't always get along, but we all have the same end game, and everyone works together very hard to make things happen and find places and answers to questions that have been here for decades in our town. We can name people that went to high school with my mom that have been homeless since then, and they are now getting the treatment that they need. And it's because of people like AVH and everyone else involved. And so I have to thank you guys for that. And I look forward to partnering in other ways in the future, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah. I'll relay that to Debbie. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. Margaret, would you like to speak for Reach for Home?
Yes, thank you. I guess the biggest update we have is, just continuing on with the L&M Village so that we have more options versus, sorry, I'm not in a place where I can have video right now or I'll lose my audio, so I apologize. But just so that we have more solutions for people, because there are people falling through the cracks that we just don't have a solution for. We are looking at doing a walkthrough here at 2:00 with a construction company that's been selected, DMR out of Santa Rosa. Their contract states that they need to start construction no later than August 15th for the 22-unit interim housing program that will be in Healdsburg, serving northern Sonoma County, including Cloverdale. We have been going out and reassessing all of the people that we've been working with, our street outreach team, to get more clear picture of who's interested and what their needs are when they get to the L&M, and all of those sorts of things. So we'll be continuing with all of that work, and we are hoping to open the L&M by the end of September, but I literally am going to a walkthrough today at 2. And so hopefully I'll have more to report at the next meeting about a more solid open date. And the good news about the L&M, I think, is that because it is a shelter, we will have a couple of emergency beds for police and hospital hospital releases and that sort of thing. So hopefully that will help part of some of the bottlenecks that we're experiencing. And then also, we will not be going through coordinated entry because shelters in Sonoma County no longer utilize coordinated entry for placement. So that gives us a little more flexibility to work with each of the cities and community partners to help those that we need to help with more data points versus just a VI SPDAT score. So that's probably our biggest update. We, as of today, are fully staffed for the L&M. We will be having 4 case managers to 22 units. So that's a really good ratio. We just hired a brand new program director who has a lot of experience and has just hit the ground running. And one of our case managers is getting her licensed clinical social worker certificate. And as a part of that, we'll be helping her with her supervisor hours, paying for them for her. So we will have a mental health professional now on staff at Reach for Home to help with all of our unsheltered individuals and the individuals in our housing program, which I think is great. And partner with people like Cherry Creek and Colleen and Jessica if they need, that sort of help as well. We can talk about stuff like that and have those conversations. Trying to think if there's anything else. I think that's about it for now. That's kind of the big piece of news.
Questions or comments? So, Margaret, recently I was out and contacted a few homeless people in our area. These ones were on private property, just in the county area. And they stated they were going to be getting housed at the L&M within the month. And that was about almost a month ago now. If you could keep us updated on an opening so that law enforcement can know, because they told me they are contacted weekly by law enforcement and everyone's trying to be patient as there's serious damage being done where these people are at. Their camp is about 250 feet long, destroying a levee, and it's only getting worse. And so I know everyone's trying to be patient because we're trying to do what's best for them. But if it gets prolonged anymore, we'd really like to know just so we can maybe figure out other options.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And what might make sense, and what we're doing here in Healdsburg with SIRE, which is a fairly similar issue, only we're talking about people who have been there 10 years and they're being asked to move, is, we're just getting together and talking about who are the people, and then we're going out and finding out what are the services they'll take. The L&M was supposed to originally open in August. We have not promised anybody a spot, just so you know, just so everybody knows. Nobody's been promised anything because we're not even open yet. So there's literally been 2 people that we have identified to be 2 of the first people in, and they do know that they've been selected, but nobody else has been told that we have basically a pool right now, like a candidate pool. So if you hear of anyone interested, refer them to us. We'll get them on the pool list to make sure that, they're a part of our case conferencing and all of those sorts of things. But Mayor Lands, if you want to meet and specifically talk about that situation, I'd be happy to, and we can make sure they get prioritized into the right places. And maybe they are one of the 2 that we've told. There is one Cloverdale resident already that we've selected to kind of help us with feedback and such. So just, maybe we can take that offline and just see if we're talking about the same person.
That would be great because this
And-
person, a lot of other issues going around, and now the person's daughter's staying there to keep her safe. And so we're all kind of, sitting on our hands, but don't want to because it could be dangerous very quickly.
Right. Yeah. Let's definitely talk. And I should also, after 2:00 today, have a little more information on when we're opening. It all has to do with construction and the order in which they're doing it. And we're really pushing them to do it in a way where we can start to open by the end of September, beginning of October. But that's fluid based on when we get the permits and such. I'm sure that you understand all that, but I'd be happy to contact you offline and just find out about that specific situation.
Thank you, Margaret. Anyone else, questions or comments? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to 5B, which is the update from Police Chief Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair Lands. I'll start like I normally do and just provide a little bit of statistics for the month of July on our activities. We had 9 homeless related calls for the month. And then we participated in 44 different foot patrols and contacts in the downtown district. We've committed to doing this for several months now, as well as enforce that curfew violation in the plaza as well. So I think that's really helping. But I want to echo the thank you to everybody that was part of that team that helped deal with the few individuals that we were dealing with on a regular basis. And I think the more important takeaway from this is the plan is sustainable. We're not seeing them. So it wasn't this revolving door effect. It's actually something that's going to be what appears to be long-term. And I think that's how we're going to be successful here. So great work by all the efforts to make that happen. Clearly, we're seeing a few more. We deal with a few, and all of a sudden we see a few more that have resembling signs and symptoms of things we've dealt with. We do get calls on these. We do try to address them, but I'm afraid we're going to be in that revolving door effect where they don't want services, don't need services, where they've been through the system. The system has left them back out here again. I think what we're going to do is maybe try to look for the same avenue that we took with the individuals that we were successful with, and try to approach this, assuming that we don't have some resolve in the near future by these couple of different individuals that I wasn't familiar with them, but according to my staff, they know who they are. So they're not new. They're just apparently acting out a little bit more than they have been, which is becoming noticeable. I want to add, as far as the vegetation fires that we've seen out in the River Park area, after Sunday, July 4th, on that fire and arrest of an individual out there, I was contacted by CAL FIRE law enforcement specialist Kelsey Scott. Kelsey was very interested in partnering with CPD as well as the Sheriff's Office on responding out to the River Park as a group and addressing those individuals that are living out there, both in the city and in the county's jurisdiction, and really trying to work with these individuals. She mostly wants to identify who they are and then advise them about laws regarding fires and starting fires. And she really is taking a lead approach on this. We're happy to partner. We're certainly happy to work with the Sheriff's Office on this. Offered up our UTV to make that happen. So she's going to get a hold of me. I don't know, Lieutenant Duke, if I reached out to you yet.
Yeah, a hold of you. Actually, I think it was that after the calls, and we came up here and I thought we took them into custody for them, transferred them down to jail.
Yes.
I believe,
Yeah, they made the arrest and you guys helped out. But shortly after that, she contacted and wanted to partner up so we could get this. I'm fully in agreement with that, whatever we can do. But I'm waiting to hear back from her. She wants to let things die down a little bit and come back around. I said, whenever you're ready, let us know. So we'll make sure that happens. As far as that's what I have for a report out to now, unless anybody has any questions.
So I do have a question. It's not necessarily on what your report, good report, by the way, but it's on Laura's law. Is there a reason Sonoma County is not participating in that? Do we know? I mean, I just try to get some history on it because it seems like to me, reading it, it would make sense that we have that. And I'm not real clear why we chose not to participate.
Yeah, as you probably saw that, it actually has to come with the board of resolution through the board of supervisors.
Exactly.
So I preach it, and you know, I'm sure the chief can tell you, sometimes our opinions need to remain to ourselves. But I'd be lying if I didn't say I was an advocate for at least looking into it. So I preached that to the board of supervisors, and I'm hoping they're taking a serious look at it. And for those who don't know, it's just the outpatient treatment. But it's more of instead of forced medication, they take it on their own. But there's an obligation for them to do that. In other words, there's not going to be no needle injections, but there'll be maybe a pill that they actually sit and watch as they ingest the pill, so they do it on their own. But there are several counties throughout the state of California that have laws. In fact, there's more counties that do have it than don't. I think the ratio is probably 2/3 to 1/3. So as I said, I think it's a great thing to really take a look at for everybody. And I've always tried to encourage the board of supervisors to consider it and continue to consider it. So thank you for bringing that up.
Well, you know, would be helpful if this group wrote a letter to our board, you know, encouraging them to lay out all the reasons.
Sure, I certainly think anything would help.
But it seems like it's something, you know, because there's people that oftentimes don't accept the treatment, but they're not mentally capable of knowing what's good for them. And not having the ability to help those people makes it almost impossible to resolve the situation. But this gives us a little bit more tools and the ability to at least try to get them on the right path. So, I mean, I'm not sure, but it would seem like a well laid out letter, laying out all the components and submitting it on behalf, putting the board where they have to respond, hopefully back to us with a well thought out response. Sure, and I would encourage that we as a group compose a letter and submit that.
And I would say there's truly a percentage, although maybe a small percentage that and maybe bigger than I realize as far as the mental health aspect, but this is actually really set up for the nuisance arrest. I'm sure the chief can attest to that as well. When you have the same person, there's a recidivism rate that grows because it's the same person you're dealing with. Laura's law actually touches on that, as well as just being diagnosed with some mental health issues. So, and I think that's what we see a lot of homeless. And I look at it sometimes as shame on us for allowing these people right in front of us to slowly, you know, go into a state of debilitation when we should be helping them. That's really what this is about.
That's what it's about. So,
Yeah, I'll certainly echo everything the Lieutenant said. I'm very much in favor, but I do think there's something that we do need to understand too. It's not a fix all for everybody. And I think there's a slight misconception, if I can say that this will just curb all the problems. There's criteria that you must meet in order for this to be applicable. And it's pretty substantiated, at least 8 criteria, and they have to be met. And that does make it somewhat of a challenge under this law. I still agree with it. I think many are applicable, but there are challenges to it in that it's not just for everybody. It's not going to just be for everybody. So just something to think about, and reading it and updating yourself with it would be excellent ideas that you kind of give an idea of what that criteria is.
well, it's just another tool to try to help you. It's not a fix all, and there's no fix all solution, but it's just one more tool that we could consider as we try to help people, because that's what it's all about. It's helping them.
That's been the true component. There's exactly what everybody's doing up there, particularly with, you know, the different houses and healthcare systems that are kicking in here to facilitate the housing and the wraparound services. That's what's most important. Housing, wraparound services. We know that, but are we implementing? I think we are. unfortunately, it just can't be fast enough. That's right.
And then on top of that, with Laura's law, it's voluntary.
Mhm.
And so that's the problem, is they can walk away or stop any time. So when you're already in this unstabilized state, most of them won't accept the services or continue with their meds. And we know that coming from a jail side, all of us that work in there. You pass people with as many meds as they can when they leave, so that you get as much stabilized time out of them when they're on their own. So it goes beyond Laura's law. It needs to turn into the county and state supporting things like conservatorship and things that people don't want to talk about, which are forced medications and things to keep people stabilized. But that's where I can say things that others don't. So
I think it's with every tool, it's from the tools 100 we have as a group to help people is to our advantage. So I do think it's a lot of work. Yes.
since we're kind of on this, could you talk a little bit about care court and back to court maybe, and how they are different or the same, and what they can do for us?
You know, I'm actually not real well versed on that. I have an understanding of, you know, again, repeat offenders and things like that, but I would hate to speak out of turn and that might be better for the district attorney's office. So I apologize, but I just hate to put out something that maybe isn't accurate as it should be.
Great, no problem. We'll work on the maybe for our next meetings if we can get somebody else. Any questions or comments from anyone else on the screen or the attendees? Seeing none, let's move on to the next. I'm sorry, no, there isn't. All of a sudden. Michael, we do have a hand in the attendees.
Looks like it's the Chamber of Commerce. If you can please state your name for the record.
And Mike, if you can go ahead and move the chamber in as a panelist.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Nina, are you there? Nina, can you unmute yourself?
Thought I unmuted. I'm terrible at this. So I wanted to let you know that I can't hear the people at the table very well at all. And I don't know why, but I'm straining. My speaker's at 100. So is anybody else having that same deal?
I think it's the microphones in the conference room. I think if you're in the back of the table, you're just going to have to speak up a little bit towards the mic.
Okay, thank you.
We'll make
That's
sure
it for now. Thank you for elevating me too, I think.
Okay, so the next will be Fire District Chief Jenkins on fire response.
Yeah, so July was a very busy month for us, relating to fires down River Park. Depending on how you count them, you know, we've had 3 fairly significant vegetation fires down there. Human caused fires. Fires down there are incredibly challenging because a lot of the area is either heavy river, you know, vegetation. And some of the areas are previous like logging timber slash that was dumped there many decades ago. So when we have a fire there, it just becomes super labor intensive. And we're usually there for 24 hours at a time for 2 or 3 days. So kind of the main smokes go away, and then smokes will pop up periodically for probably a week to 2 weeks. So the impact is pretty difficult for the fire district trying to cover that on top of the regular daily routine calls that we get. After that, the first large fire was about 10 acres in size. That's typically a little bigger than what we see down there. But the problem with this, there was a little bit of wind on it, and we had 2 intentionally set fires at the same time, approximately a couple thousand feet away. So that you throw resources at one fire, you got to do it 2 at the same time. With being at the end of the county, that reflex time to be able to cover that effectively is definitely a challenge for us. So, but the disappointing piece is that the section of property that usually burns every year is not the piece that already burned. So we could be back there again this year. The area that was worked by sheep early on in the year is fully ready to burn again. The large patchy grass, the light flashing fuels that burns, I would say pretty much every year for the last 10 years has not burned yet. Hopefully it doesn't, but it wouldn't surprise me if we're back. A week later, we had another set of fires, 2 fires, what we believe is intentionally set again, a couple thousand feet away from each other. So we definitely do have a human element problem down there that law enforcement has been aggressive with, trying to investigate, educate, everything they can do, in their toolbox, if you will, to try to prevent, things from happening. The biggest risk is if we have this happen on a windy day. The fire that we had, being 10 acres, it did slop over the freeway. We had a spot in the center median. With winds a few more miles an hour, it would have been up in the top of Chasen Hills and structures on Vista View. So that would have been a very challenging type of situation. So we're down there making patrols, checking it all the time, trying to show a huge presence. We left a lot of hose in place to make it even look like we're still there to some extent. And then if we need to relay hose, it's already there. So every year we run probably well over 50 homeless related fires down in this area every year. So it's a tremendous problem. And I just want to thank everybody's efforts in trying to hopefully tackle it and make it better to make the community safer. So other than that, it's really the only hot spot that we have in the entire district related to fires or anything that might pertain to homelessness related fires. End of report.
Mayor, if I can just add a little bit of context for those who might be listening in today to the chief's valuable input about fires at the Cloverdale River Park. Just want to note that Cloverdale River Park is co-managed. The southerly half is under the city's jurisdiction. There's a ped bridge that kind of is really approximately the boundary between the city maintained portion of River Park and the county maintained portion. So north of that head bridge, which is just north of the city's water treatment plant, represents where county jurisdiction begins. So I just want to kind of point that kind of jurisdictional boundary out in terms of city, county, police, sheriff. And I think that's valuable because it does kind of shed some light on the response and who responds. But even more than that, I think it's also reflective of some of the differences in management relative to the vegetation that's occurred between those two spaces. I know from a city perspective, we've taken a pretty aggressive approach to try and coordinate with the district and fire crews to reduce vegetation to protect our critical assets and resources, particularly the water treatment plant, which is, obviously it's a very significant feature for us. Do a lot of vegetation management, under the work that's being performed with the county's assistance. But I think there are some opportunities to look at the management techniques maybe on the county side and see if they might be willing to because of what we've experienced, take some more aggressive approach in terms of vegetation management, see if we can coordinate with the Northern Sonoma County Fire Fuels crew and the county on getting some more veg management work focused on that area. That I really think, leaving to the fire scientists to address how best to mitigate that. But from a city perspective, it's very alarming. One, because obviously the fire threat and it can jump, it can hit this view and then affect our town, but also because of critical infrastructure. So I just wanted to kind of raise that issue. I know that was a concern that was kind of reflected in some of the comments. And so just to bring that up, and I think there is maybe an opportunity to engage with the county to talk about what are some appropriate vegetation management techniques that we might want to employ in the context of these fires that really threaten our critical infrastructure.
And I'll add on to that. Those conversations are being had. They were had before the fire season. We're just not where we need to be from the fire chief's perspective of what that management needs to look like. Hopefully we can get there. On the city side, I think there's great partnership, understanding. I have no doubt that if we say, hey, this needs to get tackled, we're accomplishing that and making great strides on the city side. On the county side, we're not there yet. I think that there's just a lot of people involved. And like I said before, we need to have a much better, robust plan, a management style plan for that piece. Because if you leave it just completely natural, call it a park, but it's just natural, unchecked river vegetation, this problem is going to be consistent every single year. If you make it more like a park, if you will, those fuels are reduced, there's more people there. When you have more people there, the homeless don't want to live there. It makes it way more easier to deal with a fire if there's a fire, and safer for the community. So there's just a real disconnect on what that management needs to look like for that piece. And I say it's very different than a park at like Shiloh Regional that's really out in the rural area. This abuts our city. So it needs to have a different management style. It's not a one plan will not work for every area in the county. So we are having those conversations. Obviously, since the fire, what I said was going to happen, unfortunately. And it's going to continue to happen until we make strides to clean it up and make it better. And if we can get there, I think we'd be in a much better place. I think slowly the county is going to understand it and get there. It's just a longer process. So hopefully we can get where we need to be.
Might be just touch on the reduction, as far as what causes the fires, I think is really important. And by cutting that down, the vegetation, it's going to expose, as we all know, those that would be living the homeless. I think county parks, has a lot of buy-in on this. I think they're just going to need, they're going to need to provide some direction on how they're going to want to manage the park. And I think that would really help the process. And part of that is, like you say, creating a family-friendly park with maybe not so much natural things like some of the underbrush that we can actually filter through and try to get rid of. That could really be big. And I think that's got to come also from county parks. So I'm agreeing with everything, but I also think that when we have these conversations, maybe not these particular, but when we bring it in, county parks have a lot of buy-in on how they want that. And they could be very helpful, even getting crews out there to do some of the things that you mentioned.
Yeah, and with that said, previous years, little to nothing was done, right? So the county is making a big step forward compared to where they've been. The problem just seems to get bigger and bigger. So we're just gonna need to go full force at it.
So if I may, I would like to see us collaborate with the way, and on behalf of the city, we should be writing letters under the mayor's signature to the board president, letting them know that we have these concerns, what we think needs to happen, the dangers that are out there, and ask as a city, because we are at risk at times. And I think we need to take more of a formal approach. It's nice that we talk to people and it's going through, but we need to kind of say, as a city council, we have concerns to the board of supervisors. These are the concerns that we'd like you to interject and help us solve these. It's got to come at that level. Otherwise, I think we're going to talk until, I don't see it changing anytime soon, but the danger's there now. So, I really think we need to really look at it, the group, bring back recommendations to our council, formalize a letter, and we submit the letter to the board. The board hopefully is going to review it, ask questions, rightly so, and hopefully come up with a strategy to help us address the problem. So that would be my comments on this. I really want to see us take more of an aggressive role as a city, because our city is at risk. Our water plant, that's a huge asset.
And I'll add a little more to that too, Joe. This started last year, and between last year and this year, we've grown $105,000 plus at this to manage it. And it's only for a year long. Everything grows back, as he already talked about. The county brought the sheep out to eat instead of control burning, and it's already back. And the problem is, at its worst time is now, August, September, October. As he's already stated, the chief stated that it's going to blow through our town if we're not careful. So what I saw was too many people, because we had this meeting with county the parks, the water quality control. We had just about every single entity out there. And there's too many people there that could say no. And that was the hard part. Instead of listening to the professional that is the person that's in charge of fires and knows it better than anyone else in this county. And they should have said, you know what, we trust you to do what's right. But instead they said, well, you might get ash in my river, you might this, you might that. Well, guess what? Like I stood there next to Chief Jenkins and I said, you might get a little bit of ash right now, but when you get a park full of ash if you're not careful. Well, lo and behold, we got 10 acres of ash out there now. And probably a 6-figure number on resources. But there's a fire out there right now. There's a little smolder still, so it's still burning and we're 2 weeks into this, 3 weeks into this. So I just see a lot of resources being thrown at it when we know what the right answer is, and it's listen to the professionals. I think that we do need to take that aggressive stance that you're talking about
And I
and
think
push harder on it.
getting with the professional or saying and articulating that in our letter. Concern.
But Joe, I think you're right, because when we originally were kind of told, hey, your plan's not gonna happen, I couldn't be okay with that. And so in a conversation I had with a supervisor, he's like, yes, I agree, let's make this happen. I think the board of supervisors want to react and make it happen. I think we're saying just one person can derail it, make it no. That's what happened. And I think if there was a more official request to the board of supervisors, help us here's our issue, and they basically said, yes, we're good, that might trickle down to get that broader support.
And we can hold them somewhat accountable, if you will, to respond to our concerns. If we articulate that in an official letter. And I really want to say, I would like to put the letter together and have it, presented to the council to authorize our mayor to sign it on our behalf and submit it. But we really got to put our heads together on what are the problems, clearly lay them out, and what's our recommended solutions so we don't have a disaster, or at least minimize the I mean, you can never eliminate any potential disaster, but we certainly can take steps to minimize that.
Sports with the heat and control.
Sure.
Fire science had proven that spot. He said this spot will burn.
There's been a lot of great work there this year, which is noticeable. There's certain areas of the river, you walk out to see the river again, it's cleaned up. In my opinion, we're about 25% of the way there. Like we need another 2 years of heavy funding management and that whole park to make it what it probably should be, to where it's relatively safe. If there's a fire, the largest it's gonna get is probably an acre. It's not gonna be 10 acres. It's gonna just need some more funding and more attention. But you've seen the little sections that we've done. It looks beautiful. It's along the way. And then the very north end of the park, one of the residents there has actually come onto county park property, been kind of caretaking and managing it himself for the last 15 years. It's picturesque, beautiful house, beautiful trees, it's beautiful. And the fire stopped right when it hit the spot that he was worked up to. If that, and I'm not saying we gotta go to that level of detail, but there's some combination between, I think it'll be a great resource for the community and be way safer.
Last week, we did have a meeting with the county and we advocated for last week or 2 weeks ago, I don't remember, but we had advocated to have a 5-year management plan put in place and make it to where it was more efficient to manage. So like right now, Jason talked about all the logs and all the old, things laying around, all the old trees. Maybe we start creating it where you can come through there with a mower and it makes it for Hector or the county or whoever's involved to go through there and mow sections. And you're done in 4 days versus 4 weeks, and 4,000 versus 40,000 in areas and things like that. I also have a meeting on the 16th with the county supervisor, and that is the place where we are going to start the meeting, is in that burn zone.
Before we move forward to the next topic, I don't know if we've done with that, but I just want to say something for the next topic. So if there's more on this, please go ahead.
Yeah, I see a hand on the attendees. Michael.
Yes, council member Cruz is raising her hand.
Okay. Councilmember Cruz, can you?
Yes, good afternoon. I am just really at awe that all this discussion is happening And unfortunately, with Chief Jenkins, we've never been able to have a liaison meeting. I mean, so, you know, the last 2-3 meetings have been canceled and have not been, rescheduled, and David Kelly has made the approach. These are the kinds of things that need to be discussed with the board and with the council. So I would like to see if perhaps we can have this kind of conversation in the city fire district subcommittee at some point prior to October. Because I have been concerned and I have been approaching, and so has David, but it hasn't happened, Chief Jenkins.
Yeah, it hasn't happened for a variety of reasons with different scheduling, councils scheduling, fire district scheduling. We can call for a special meeting at any point in time. We're more than happy to do that. So if you want to select some dates and throw that out, we can coordinate a meeting as soon as next week. No
It's
problem.
okay. It's all the information is out there. It's happening. Councilmember Pala is requesting action, so I advise that continues. David and Kevin to move on and go ahead. Thank you. And I think for the next 5 months that I have left, perhaps Councilmember Pala and Mayor Lambs should take over the liaison position, given that I haven't been successful at this. So thank you very much.
That might be a good idea. We discussed last month about consolidating some of these subcommittees, maybe.
Exactly.
Tomorrow, I will suggest we do so and bring the fire to this meeting as well.
Yes, very good, because I did suggest that. Thank you. That was all.
I just wanted to piggyback off of the vice chair was saying as far as, I don't know if the word's putting it on notice, but just the constant and continual communication that I've had with you, Mayor, as well as some of the citizens that live in the county that have great concerns over the fire, which a prompt does us as a county from the law enforcement perspective to put more resources up there. As you know, we're spread thin and we're talking the whole county. But because there was really some loud voices, which are greatly appreciated, we were able to move some resources up here. So as of today, the Department of Health Services is actually out along the riverbanks on both sides. They just got a text. I think they might have just gotten done. But their goal is to put everybody on the public property on notice for, either we're going to find housing for you and provide you services, or, you're going to be subject to arrest after they're noticed. And we go through the whole criteria of Martin Boyd's decision to make sure we fulfill all of our obligations. Also with that, on the private lands that are running along the park side, mostly along river beds on both east and west sides, we are developing a mapping system and parcel maps for each one of the properties, where we're going to be contacting each property owner personally and seeing if they're interested in doing a trespass action request form, which gives us authority to actually make a trespass arrest without them being present. Try to provide them with information as far as game cameras and type of surveillance, so we can catch people coming onto the property. So these are some of the things that we're trying to do. And I just, again, want to piggyback. Yes, bring it to people's attention. And the mayor was a great advocate for that. And so are some of the citizens that live in the county to, I use word force, but allow us to become more proactive in this area. Because as you know, we get pulled in many directions. So sometimes I don't know what the actual metaphor is about squeaky wheel, but I think it was very effective in this instance.
I know I've always had a lot of success in different areas. Once you do it officially, you start and you follow through on those constant requesting updates, and they're getting updates. So it goes up and back, and it goes back down. And I think it really carries a lot.
You have a lot of concern.
And it keeps the right people in.
And we intended to piggyback off of that. The discussion we had last week was really well done. And I thank you and everyone for coming out. You had sergeants, lieutenants, deputies, everyone was out there. The good thing is there was a county representative there with us, and they are in the talks to do what it takes to try to get more bodies to help with this problem. Just letting you know. I don't know how far that will go, but the talks are being done, and it's really circulating because, like I said, it's a good deal. So, it was also mentioned about UTV to help out when needed, and you mentioned it before you started. So thank you guys for being willing to work together. Was there something else that I had for you on that exact topic? is something about last week, but no, it's all great stuff, and thank you guys.
We just talked about it, the timeline. The timeline was to get public health there with their outreach personnel, and that's happening this week. And then next week, we will actually be able to provide notice and on private properties, make sure that they're belong.
If I can turn to the chair, I have a question for Lieutenant Duke. My understanding is the county is either in the process or has adopted the updated camping ordinance. And I guess I was curious the extent to which it provides for or contains language that would prohibit. And, now you have to kind of revisit our old camping ordinance. Can't say it's not allowed everywhere, but kind of the new thinking is to revise those to prohibit camping within areas that may be subject to flooding, high fire severity zones, or other criteria that's important for vehicular movement, or there's a whole set of kind of criteria that you can look at that is important for the public. But was curious if maybe if you in the future might be able to provide an update on the camping ordinance. I think that might be something we want to look at. It's going to be marked, and look at what provisions we might want to adopt, kind of dovetailing on what the efforts the county has made, so that some of the problems we're seeing are there that we're working on addressing don't become our problems, and we have mechanisms in place to address some of the issues that we're well aware of with respect to encampments in the areas that are prone to fires and floods.
And what's funny is, I'm sorry,
No.
I was just gonna say, that was exactly what I wanted to talk about, that way I was forgetting. There's a lot of cities right now, they're doing exactly what we are, but they're usually a city or somewhere in the rural areas. We have both. And so the county's doing a great job with the health and safety part. And Chief and I have talked about it quite a bit. Maybe the new ordinances are based around that, just health and safety, so that it kind of circumvents Martin v. Boise. So we have to look at other people, what they're writing in their ordinances might help us see where not just through the county, but through some of these cities in the areas. So we don't have effect in the city limits as well.
Who's the landowner on the 200-foot long strip that's the largest camp down there now?
You have two different people. You have, there's a vineyard management company on the first one, and you have Vulcan on the second. So Vulcan, both of them are signed trespass action requests. But it's timing of them or people that might be moving to other places or coming into town if you move them right now.
Okay, and is that the parcel that is near the tracks and in the
No,
cemetery?
no,
That's another one.
that's another one. That's what I'm talking about, the ones on the east side of the river. On the tracks area, you have Smart and you've got Caltrans, I believe, two. If I'm wrong, Lieutenant Chief, no, you're right.
As far as
Smart took over all Caltrans.
No, NCRA had it and Smart took over NCRA.
But the portion of that is outside, they're only responsible, I think, for 100 feet. But
Caltrans is like 150 feet from the fog line or something. It's there's a little bit of crossover.
and we're not past midnight.
So, I mean, maybe what I was thinking is maybe we could review the county's camping ordinance and then start to look at what provisions we might want to consider as part of a draft update of our own ordinance. We still have the kind of pre-Martin v. Boise provisions in our muni code that really aren't enforceable at this point. So, maybe something we want to consider, especially in light of the county's effort to update their ordinance and map out these particularly with Chief Jenkins' input and Chief Rose's input in the areas where there's other public health and safety concerns, in flooding, fire, recreational access, and so forth, that we can, actually put some provisions in our code that prohibit camping.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I've seen, or we're starting to see that you can't build a bicycle on the sidewalk provisions in there. I mean, it's like, it's getting very specific to try to, can't sleep in doorways, things like that.
Right.
Quality of life improvement for public people. Yes, sir. Anything else? Anyone in the audience? No hands? All right. Cloverdale Homelessness Strategic Plan Framework. David?
Okay, thank you, Mayor, Chair. This item really just was, again, placed on the agenda to note that we're bringing this forward to council on Wednesday to ask for council support for formal adoption of the strategic plan. You know, reflects a culmination of our efforts. I think at county we've had at least 15 meetings. Again, we had a little bit of a pause during COVID, but we, we've reinitiated this effort in earnest. We did tackle other issues that were kind of outside the strategic plan that, were topical and current. Vegetation management is, for instance, has really became a critical issue that when we started this effort, that wasn't necessarily a high priority per se, but that's become, taking a lot of energy and focus and something that we've taken on as an issue, not just because it's important for managing fires, but because of the connection to homelessness. But really just again, want to take the opportunity to thank the committee, the community advisory group that has participated in this process to develop this plan. And Kevin obviously surveyed the community to kind of determine what were the key priorities, and what you see is one of the top priorities. Really, number one is the safety of our community. And I think that's reflective of our discussion, really reflective of the discussions we've had today. So I think it's a good plan. Help guide our efforts. Ultimately, could be used as a tool to apply for funding opportunities. But by the same token, it's not something that should sit on the shelf. It should be something we look at, revisit, and update accordingly as needed. And so it will be something I think we will want to continue to take a look at, maybe on a quarterly basis or semi-annual basis as a check-in, but also as to give some guidance in our planning efforts. But again, the plan is both the council follow staff's recommendation to adopt the plan, and it's really about implementation.
Thank you. And thank you, Kevin, for your guys' hard work on that. Any comments or questions? Anyone in the audience, any attendees, anybody want to make any questions or comments?
No one is raising their hand at this time, Mayor.
All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next. 5E, the Safe Parking Program. I don't know who's headed.
Mayor, I'm happy to kind of introduce this topic. This issue has come up before the subcommittee. I think at the previous subcommittee meeting, there was a discussion about a letter to the county in support of establishing a formal safe parking program. In response to that, I did reach out to staff at the Community Development Commission, and ultimately had a direct communication with county staff members in regards to what was an expressed interest in establishing a safe parking program within the city of Cloverdale. Most specifically, the request was to look at a safe parking program at the Cloverdale Airport. And so I wanted to bring that back to the subcommittee, just so that they're aware that there was a request from the county to look at the airport, and just outline what my response was, and then getting direction or feedback from the subcommittee. Undoubtedly, there is a lot of interest in establishing safe parking programs for RVs in the county, and county is looking at putting resources towards those programs. With that said, in terms of the airport, understandably, there's not a lot of adjacent residential development or neighbors that we necessarily are concerned about, but nonetheless, they are important neighbors. But more importantly, the airport has some safety zones that are really critical. So establishing, an RV parking obviously brings occupants into an area that's really not intended for, really it's not even intended for low occupancy on a 24/7 basis. So bringing in safe parking where you're bringing residents into an area, it immediately conflicts with the density standards for your airport safety zone. And we have some existing issues at our airport that we've been working on, addressing with the height standard of some of our hangars there. It kind of, because it's a relatively linear property, the overflight zone kind of extends out as an imaginary plane from the taxiway and the landing strip. And there's not intended to be any intrusions within in that zone. So you bring in an RV because of height, because of the kind of structures, storage materials that might be on top, you start to intrude into that safety zone. So that feedback was provided to county staff, that at least from a technical perspective, I didn't think it was feasible to establish a safe parking program. Didn't get into the other aspects of programming, funding, oversight and management. Of course, the impacts it may have to the city in terms of police response and so forth. But really, it was just looking at it from a kind of strictly technical feasibility perspective first. And at least from my perspective, it didn't meet that criteria. So I didn't feel like it was worth continuing to discuss it in more detail and do a full analysis of all those other issues that we might want to address. Just because, from a strictly health and safety perspective, I didn't think it was feasible. But didn't do a deep evaluation on that. Happy to do that if this committee so directs. But I guess it also wanted to note that there clearly is interest in establishing a safe parking program. And I think probably what's going to be defined as Northern Sonoma County. And we've looked at that in terms of are there sites within the city? And I did not come to a good conclusion on identifying sites that might be feasible. But again, happy to have that conversation and look at it further. Just want to really kind of bring it up and share the conversations that have been had today on this issue.
Thank you, David. Anyone else want to comment?
Well, I'd just like to make a comment. If I could, I just want to say I support your position. I think the airport would be a horrible spot. There's a lot of assets down there, and there's, you have airplanes coming and going. And having the 24/7 populated area down there with potential trash getting put on the runway could be a very serious safety issue, not to mention the value of all the hangars and all the high-cost aircrafts that are stored down there. So I don't think that would be an appropriate place to bring a safe park program. I support that as well.
I'd be interested in what the FAA or the TSB, how they would feel about it.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it might be a place to stop or shop at just to see what type of response you get.
Especially with an unfenced runway.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that popped into my head is you're dealing with people that aren't stable. And there's no lights. It's not set up for
the right location.
If it was, they'd be doing it somewhere around Sonoma County Airport, I would guess, because you have huge areas that are fenced and make it would be a lot easier.
You even have old animals in those state and the old military base there, South.
Sorry about that. Sir.
Good.
Any
Well,
other,
thank you, David.
any other comments or questions? Anyone in the attendees or panelists that wants to make a comment or question?
No one is raising their hand at this time.
Okay. Well, that's the last thing we have on our list. And David, because of the way you handled that, I'm not going any deeper into the questions I had. There's no reason to. So, anything for future agenda items that we want to discuss now or that we put on it?
Well, I just want to piggyback on what we talked about earlier, I'd like to see us look at an official letter from our city council that's asking for certain things to take place along the River Park area. And I don't have all the ingredients to that letter, but I know by talking to each of the individuals in here, we can articulate a very good letter outlining the concerns as well as recommendations. And I'd like to see that be bring forward sooner than later to be, signed under the mayor's signature to go out and basically we'll continue to get follow-up on that letter. So
In this committee's opinion, do we need to bring them back here? Or do
I don't
David
think so.
release to this
So we can
subcommittee?
circle around and I can release some good comments. on what
Yeah,
I
I think we know what we want. I think it's just gonna go to the city council for finalization, authorization. So it's coming from the city.
Direction noted, and I think we'll work to try to bring this forward on the 24th for the right after me. I'll coordinate with you, chief, especially to identify what's the management objectives we
Some
want.
goals that we have.
Right.
Yep.
I noted the 5-year management plan need for funding the corresponding plan, taking into account the law enforcement concerns from the chief and you lieutenant Duke. And I'll circulate the draft letter and then bring that forward for council support to advance.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I see a hand up from Nina. Hey, you're up.
There, I unmuted. So I'm sorry that I missed the earlier part of the meeting. I just wanted to say that I sat in on a county homelessness advisory group last week via Zoom, and it was actually presented by the people that are the group that is going to be responsible for the rollout, and then following up with all the players to make sure that the county is doing. I think they're way behind what we're doing, and I know we're a smaller area of responsibility, but it made me feel I'm really proud of the work that all of you've done in terms of wrapping our arms around the problem that we have here locally, getting the appropriate players to the table. And we're light years ahead of the county. I mean, we need their support, absolutely, but it was nice to see. I just wanted to give you just a little thumbnail sketch of what that felt like. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. And almost to piggyback off that, I think they're short on resources right now because of some different budget cuts and things that have been handed down. And I know that our voice will hopefully help them get some of these resources that they need as well. So when you show progress, you show solution and say, look, our way does work, then it leaves them with no choice but to support you. And it takes money and it takes them to say yes. And that's what these conversations, that's why we have these. And the vegetation management plan, the county calls it something from, I won't say the name, but it's something from Cloverdale, because they're basing it off of what we've done. And it's good to see that they're listening now. And it's because of the work that everyone in this room and everyone on the screen is doing. So thank you.
Just one more comment. I'd also like to see in that letter, or we could do a separate letter, but I don't think we should let the fact that Laura's law would be another tool in the toolbox. And I'd like to see us ask that they give serious consideration to adopting it. And I would welcome having both Chief Ferguson and Lieutenant Duke give some of the pros. It's not a fix-all. No one's suggesting that, but it will add a few tools to help deal with those that are not willing to accept help. And I think that's an important element in dealing with mental health issues. So, we could incorporate that, your approval, into the letter, one letter, two facets that we're asking them, because, based on this meeting, they're both important aspects. So,
anything else?
I would just suggest also maybe make sure county parks, because I think they may have some ideas that we wouldn't think of either. They've done some of their other parks. I don't know what they would be, but that's their forte, so I think we can maybe give some great ideas, I hope.
Okay, seeing nothing else, we adjourn. Oh, no,
Before we go, I was just gonna, we currently meet monthly. And just really kind of as a check-in, if you want to continue with monthly meetings, certainly fine, that's what we're programmed and ready to do. But otherwise, if you thought, at this time, there was interest in maybe going every other month or quarterly, there's just one to throw that out there, that's for your consideration, obviously.
You and I had a discussion. I'd like to hear what other people have to say before I mention anything about my thoughts.
Well, I'm fine with bi-monthly, being every other month, recognizing we can always call it if there's an issue. I mean, that's on any of these committees or groups, if there's something that comes up, but if there's not a lot new, we can fight here. So.
From our perspective, as far as the county, I think we're, this next month is going to be significant for us. So I don't know if you wanted to pass this next month or start it. Need one more month and then go every other month, because it might be able to see some really, hopefully some really good progress along the river here. If we do that, that might be worth reporting and just getting the feedback of what else can we do, what haven't we done, or things going well should continue this path. Because as you mentioned, when we sat down and tried to develop a plan, it was actually a great plan. We're Sergeant on this, who spearheaded this, but he says this might be a model we can try to implement throughout the county, just like Cloverdale's doing. Person who spoke is absolutely right. That you guys, in my opinion, I've seen you're actually setting the trend, which should be good. So a lot of it just comes with housing when you can, but the wraparound services now important. So it is a model, and you guys are doing it. So I think people are migrating up here to see how you're doing.
So with that, I'd say we stick to monthly until we feel it's not necessary. Thank you. Anything else, David? Anyone? All right, now can I do it? Meeting adjourned 2:41. Thank you, guys.
Thank